Every empire promises sound money. Every ruler swears the coin in your hand today will be worth the same tomorrow. And every time, history proves them wrong. In the Ottoman world, the edges did the talking. Not with speeches, but with shavings. The coins didn't explode. They didn't vanish. They simply thinned, quietly, predictably, a fraction at a time. And as the silver disappeared from the rim, so did salaries, savings, and trust. This is the quiet heist of a century. How coin clipping and state debasement hollowed out wealth across an empire that spanned 3 continents and several hundred years. Before ledgers were digits and money was a screen, Ottoman life was scored in small silver discs called akçe. Markets priced in them, soldiers were paid in them, taxes were tallied by their count. The promise of a silver coin is simple enough to feel eternal. A unit you can weigh, not merely believe, but the danger of silver is the loophole hiding in that same promise. A unit you can shave. There were 2 hands at work. One belonged to the street, the private clipper who trimmed edges and passed the coin at full face value, a petty predator masked by the speed of the bazaar. The other belonged to the mint, the official clipper, polite in name if not in consequence. The Ottomans called it taushish, recoinage that quietly reduced the silver content, multiplied across millions. The stamp stayed loyal, the substance did not. Empires rarely turned to the file while their fortunes are rising. Early on, the akçe held steady enough to win faith. Provinces joined, taxes flowed, bazaars glittered. But conquest is a habit that builds itself. Frontiers smolder, fortresses drink stone and timber, fleets eat forests, janissaries want arrears, and then a little more, and the court invents new ways to glow. A state with appetites has 3 choices. When revenue lags behind vision, it can squeeze taxpayers until trouble spills into the streets. It can borrow and hand the future a bill, or it can redefine the meaning of the money that pays for everything. Guess which option raises the least dust in the short run? The playbook was as elegant as it was ruthless. Announce a recoinage, dress it in ceremony, stamp the Sultan's fresh tavra so the people can feel renewal in their palms. Call in the old coins for the good of order. At the mint, shave not with a blade but with a decision. Lower the silver per coin by a pinch here, a grain there. Release the new crop to the market and let prices do the confession. Bread doesn't read decrees, it reads metal. When the coin lightens, the loaf grows heavy. In the gap between face value and metal content, the treasury skims seigniorage. No arrests, no riots, only arithmetic. The edge of every coin becomes a ledger line where the state writes itself a raise. But the bazaar is not naive, and the bazaar does not forgive. The moment suspicion sets in that the coin is thinning, Gresham's law unsheathes itself in silence. Bad money drives out good. Heavy coins vanish into jars and floorboards, into the mouths of furnaces and crucible, into the saddlebags of merchants who know the road to a foreign mint. Light coins do the talking at the market because only fools speak in full sentences when grammar has changed. The people knew the difference, and they acted like accountants because survival trains careful habits. Large transactions were weighed, not counted. A bag of akçe was no longer a number. It was a mass. Foreign thalers and ducats began to function as a second language of trust. The empire could command a stamp. It could not command belief. Clipping is never a single act. Once the system learns to snack on silver, it develops a taste, and every taste becomes a habit. Each round of shaving buys a season of calm until prices rise to meet it. Then real wages sink beneath the surface, soldiers grumble in barracks, suppliers tie knots in their contracts, and the treasury, surprised by the consequences of its own relief, reaches for the file again. The weaver in Bursa did not need a theory of money to feel it. Month by month, the rent list did not change in ink, but changed meaning. The same number of coins bought less of everything that mattered. The dowry chest did not shrink, its power did. The word on everyone's tongue was dearness. Economists would later call it inflation. The name is a formality, the mechanism is the story. Debasement is not a moral sermon, it is a machine that sorts winners and losers with metronomic precision. Those who receive the thinning coins first, court suppliers, well-placed merchants, tax farmers who rent the right to squeeze on schedule, spend before prices fully adjust and thus steal a march on the unconnected. Hoarders with patience and storage carve quiet gains by sitting on the heavy issues or shifting into foreign coin that laughs at local policy. Savers suffer the oldest joke in finance. The future they planned buys less than the present they sacrificed. Wage earners find out how slowly salaries walk while prices sprint. None of this requires a conspiracy. A mint, a policy, and time produce the same result every time. Money is not just currency, it is a promise. And when coin thinks, promise does too. The damage rippled outward from the stalls into the state's bones. Tax collection twisted. If obligations were fixed in coins while the coins themselves slid in silver, tax farmers squeezed harder to make reality equal the fiction written on contracts. The iltizam system, auctioning the right to collect taxes, can function when money is measured reliably. When money melts, the auction produces predators and desperations. In barracks, the janissaries practiced their own arithmetic. Pay in light coins burned patience, arrears burned loyalty, and the combination burned cities. Procurement buckled, with timber merchants, grain dealers, and gunsmiths demanding payment by weight or in stable foreign pieces. The state got revenue sooner and trust later, and later has a way of arriving loudly. The market retaliated with 1,000 small self-defenses. By weight, not word, became a norm for large deals. Scales replaced stamps in matters that carried risk. Prices were posted in foreign units as a quiet confession that the official measure had lost its meaning. Coins from thin years acquired a discount all their own. Men and women turned into living price indexes, remembering which sultan's issues rang true on stone and which clinked too bright and too light. Bullion discovered migration routes. Carts found the border. Furnaces learned the shape of foreign dyes. You can police smugglers on the road. You cannot police arithmetic in your mind. Of course, there were reforms. There are always reforms. Mints were reorganized. Officials were punished. Proclamations swore that integrity was restored. New coins were unveiled like fresh banners before a battleship. But policy speaks one language and memory speaks another. Once trust cracks, every promise is heard through the crack. A coin can be heavier. A system cannot regain innocence. There's a long arc to these stories that loops from bright silver to ink. Debasement has a way of modernizing by accident. As confidence in small silver eroded and trade grew more complex than any chest could count, the empire leaned on large pieces, on ledgers written by steady hands in the merchant houses, and eventually on paper. Paper is the same trick without the smoke of the furnace. You do not need to shave edges when you can print edges. The hinge remains the same, the ability to expand units faster than real goods and services appear. Grain does not grow because a proclamation is eloquent. Timber does not season because a minister is confident. When money outpaces value, the difference shows up as rising prices and strained voices, and as a quiet siphon from savers to spenders who live nearest to the spigot. It is tempting to think of coin clipping as a medieval embarrassment, a curiosity of primitive rulers fiddling with weights. But the technique is simply a tool that changes clothing. The Ottoman Mint had files and furnaces. The modern state has spreadsheets and a central bank balance sheet. The handle is different, the blade is the same. Expand the supply of units, call it stabilization, and let the bazaar translate the policy into prices. In a world of paper and pixels, the edge is shaved from packaging and measures. Shrinkflation steals weight from your pantry the way Tashish stole silver from your purse. Your flour bag keeps its number and loses its substance. Your bar of soap curves where it used to square. Your chocolate stretches wrapper further than memory. The stamp has always been committed to optimism. The scale has always been committed to physics. The human ledger is where the math lands. Picture a widow burying a small chest of akçe for her daughter's dowry, coins saved one market day at a time. 10 years later, she unearths the chest and meets the laughter of price lists. She never dropped a coin. The empire dropped the silver. Or a janissary, paid arrears in freshly struck light issues, marches toward the frontier and discovers that wine sellers and grain dealers have become amateur metallurgists. The money he earned fell in value between barracks and bazaar. He was cheated at the mint and then again at the stall, and he knows from experience which insult stings more. Or a merchant with connections receives the whisper before the proclamation, breaks weak coin into strong bullion, feeds it to a foreign mint, and returns with thalers whose ring is reputation. He buys city property from distressed sellers at prices the new coin has made unfair. No banners, no speeches, just a quiet resorting of society along the fault lines that policy carved. People like to look for villains because villains make stories simple. Debasement does not need villains. It needs only a state under strain and a myopic refusal to accept that arithmetic is a form of truth-telling. Rulers try to buy time and discover that time demands interest. The public tries to save for the future and discovers the future was siphoned off to purchase the present. Everyone can claim that no one ordered a transfer from the many to the few. That is precisely how the transfer works. This pattern did not remain trapped in the past. The sequel plays in modern costumes. The mint file became the balance sheet. Interest rates pin low and stay there until they forget what altitude felt like. The supply of money balloons in the name of smoothing crises, and the crises learn the schedule. Official inflation numbers whisper, the weekly cart shouts. Workers begin to ask for raises that outpace the statistic that pretends to measure their pain. Savers diversify into things that do not apologize for their scarcity. Land and stone, metal and beryl, skills you cannot clip, and services that refuse to be printed. Parallel currencies reappear in quiet ways. Stable stores of value signal to one another across borders. The names change, the bazaar does not. There are lessons, but they are stubbornly unfashionable. Trust the scale, not the stamp. The stamp is branding, the scale is physics. Whatever units your age admires, translate them into realities by which a life is lived. How many hours of labor does this unit buy? How many loaves? How many kilowatt hours or liters or square meters? In the Ottoman world, wise merchants priced large deals by weight, even when they opened their mouths in the language of the akçe. The trick was simple. Speak at face value to remain polite, settle in substance to remain solvent. Be early to adjustment. If you cannot live near the source of new money, live near the hedges that refuse to be multiplied by decree. Expect policy to defend the policy. When governments reach for the file, they inevitably build a philosophy that blesses files. They call debasement stabilization, modernization, and flexibility. Expect price controls, patriotic campaigns, and moral lectures. Expect none of them to add silver. And remember that institutions remember. Merchants in Ottoman ports never forgot which thalers rang true on stone. Build your own internal registry of trustworthy measures. Businesses that price honestly, indices that track reality rather than narrative, mentors who speak about weights and hours rather than slogans and seasons. There is also an ethic in small private acts of resistance that never make a banner. Families refuse to save in units that melt. Contracts are written with guards inside them, pegged to the realities both parties can see. Households count a portion of their savings in things that fire and policy cannot invent. Skills are cultivated because skills compound the way money was supposed to. Debasement is a policy that hollows out through repetition. The antidote is a set of habits that replenishes through repetition. Measuring honestly, buying prudently, storing value where files cannot reach, bargaining in terms that admit physics. The Ottoman story invites a bigger mirror. People see sultans in turbans, processions and calls to prayer, ships on the Golden Horn, bazaars written in spices. It all feels safely distant. But coin clipping was not exotic. It was ordinary governance whenever stress overtook courage. It was the default of states that couldn't afford their plans and refused to shrink their plans to fit the world they ruled. When revenues lagged and frontiers burned, the mint picked up the slack. Then the market picked up a scale. Every age thinks it is smarter than the last. We have models and dashboards and an alphabet of tools the Ottomans could never dream of. But the temptation remains the same. Believe a proclamation can outvote a price. Believe a lighter unit can buy the same loaf. Believe a quiet heist isn't theft if conducted with enough gentleness. Arithmetic has never been impressed by tone. There is a synthesis worth holding tight enough to leave marks. Ottoman coin clipping wasn't a burst of crime. It was a tide of policy. No single shave bankrupted the public. The repetition did. This is how one moves mountains in finance. Not by pushing, but by sanding. A gram here, a basis point there, and one morning the middle of the society wakes to find that the hill it climbed has been planned flat. Debasement does not break systems in the cinematic way people expect. It hollows them, and hollow things still stand until something leans, and then they don't. The warning is not apocalyptic. It is practical. If you live in a world where the stamp is confident and the scale is ashamed, adjust your ledger accordingly. You do not control a mint, but you control your counting. Translate price into substance. Count in hours and kilowatt hours, and calories and liters, and ounces and meters, and the realities that refuse to be defined by policy. Save in forms that cannot be clipped by decree, and do not be surprised when official stories lag behind the market's truth. Expect that the defense of a thinning unit will come with fine words. Expect that fine words will not weigh a loaf. If the coin in your hand, whatever century you live in, seems to be shrinking without moving, trust your own eyes. The bazaar told the truth 500 years ago. It still does. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.